All right, it is 7:30, so I will call to order the April 2022 meeting for the City of Troy Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is Mike Bosbrook. I am the chair of the board, and welcome everyone here tonight. Did not meet last month, so hopefully everyone found something to do on our Tuesday evening of March, but it's great to be here tonight. We have 6 members of the board present tonight. We have one who is absent, but we do have a quorum, so we are able to proceed with business tonight. So I will start with our agenda with item number 1, and I will ask Mr. Paul Evans if he could take the roll for tonight.
Mr. Greenery.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Here.
Mr. Forster.
Here.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Here.
Ms. Malala-Holly.
Here.
Mr. Bossenbrook.
I am here. Thank you, Mr. Evans. And we will move on to our second item, which is the reading of our rules of procedure. And per our custom, if I could ask our vice chair, Mr. Eisenbacher, to read for us our opening statement and our rules of procedure for the ZBA.
The Zoning Board of Appeals is a group of 7 of your neighbors appointed by City Council to decide on requests for variances and other matters that are brought before them. A variance is a relaxation of the literal provisions of the zoning ordinance. Petitioners must indicate a hardship or practical difficulty with the land that would warrant the granting of the variance. Procedure. The board will hear the items in the order that they appear on the agenda. When an item is called, the chairman will verify that the petitioner is present. Then the city administration will summarize the facts of the case. The petitioner then will be given an opportunity to address the board to explain the justification for the action requested. After the petitioner makes their presentation and answers any questions that the board may have, the chairman will open the public hearing. At the conclusion of public comments, the chairman will close the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, no other public comment will be taken unless in response to a specific question by a member of the board. The board will then make a motion to approve, deny, or postpone the request. In order for the request to pass, a minimum of 4 votes are needed. If the request is not granted, the applicant has the right to appeal the board's decision to Oakland County Circuit Court.
Great, thank you, Mr. Eisenbacher, for reading our procedure. We will move on then to item number 3, which is approving the minutes for February's meeting. If anyone, unless there's any discussion on the minutes that were printed in the agenda, do we have a motion to approve?
I so move.
Mr. Forster moves to, and seconded by Mr. Green. Thank you. Believe, unless there's discussion on that motion, we can move forward with the vote. Mr. Evans?
Mr. Bossenbrook.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Forster.
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly.
Yes.
Mr. Greenery.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And item number 4 is approving our agenda for tonight, which I think we all have in front of us. Unless there's any discussion on that, we'll go ahead and approve tonight's agenda, which we will do. And that will bring us to our 5th item, which is the hearing of cases. We have 1 item before us tonight, which is a variance request for 2840 Donegal. And at this point, I would ask Mr. Evans to go ahead and introduce the appeal to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as printed in the agenda, this is a variance request for 2840 Donegal. It is to construct home additions. They are requesting several additions. One of them, the addition is going to be proposed to be 37.32 feet from the front property line. The zoning ordinance requires it to be 40 feet setback along one side property line. They want to construct 7.68 feet where the zoning ordinance away from the property line, where the zoning ordinance requires the addition to be set back 15 feet. And the combined total of both side yard setbacks, left and right, has to equal at least 30 feet, and combined, the proposed setbacks are just shy at 29.02 feet. So in order to proceed, they're seeking relief from those three provisions of the zoning ordinance. I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Are there any members of the board at this point who would have a question for city staff on what we've heard so far? I have one question, Mr. Evans, if you're able to answer it. If not, and my computer is operating slowly here, or maybe this is better directed to the petitioner, but I'm looking at the packet, and I think it's after the statement of difficulty, the first drawing that was presented.
In my presentation or the agenda?
Right there, I think.
That one? Yeah.
If you zoom in on the sort of the left side of the property, right there, there's a reference to a private easement for, it says for public utilities, and at least part of the proposed addition is going into that private easement. And I'm just curious if you have any additional information about that, like the nature of the easement or what it is.
No, I don't. And part of the reason why I don't is since this board isn't empowered to give any variances to put something there, they'd have to get permission from the utility or the easement holders to do that. But I don't have any additional information. But I agree with you, perhaps the applicant is aware.
Okay, thank you. So no other questions for city staff? Then I will ask the petitioner and/or their representative who would like to speak on behalf of Mr. Green, did you have a question?
Unrelated, I was wondering if Mr. Motzni or Mr. Evans could shut the shades, I believe it is, glaring in our petitioner's eyes.
Oh,
Thank you, sir.
thank you very much for noticing that. But at this point, yes, if we could have the petitioners and/or at some point their representative, if you could, sir, just identify yourself for us and try to speak clearly into the podium microphone so we can pick up what you're saying.
Sure. My name is Jake O'Brien. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. And I am the homeowner, along with my wife, Amanda. So I just wanted to first thank you for your time and consideration tonight, and just give you a little bit of background about our motivations for asking for this variance. My wife, Amanda, grew up in Troy, has family in Troy, but as of 2019, we were living in Philadelphia full-time. We purchased this home in order to spend to be here part-time, in order to spend some time here to help out with Amanda's family situation. When COVID hit and quarantine came into effect, we happened to be here for a couple weeks and ended up staying here because it was circumstances, but also we're happy it was a more comfortable place to stay out quarantine rather than our small, home in Philly, which is in a crowded neighborhood. Over the course of quarantine, Amanda's family's situation changed, and we ended up taking full-time care of our niece, our teenage niece, and because of that, ended up making this our full-time home. So basically, the home that we purchased, that we very much like, and all the things that we were looking for in a home still stand. We love the privacy, we love the neighborhood, we love the access to nature, we love the location. But the home itself was falling a little short. It was intended to be a part-time home for 2 of us, and now it's a full-time home for 3 of us. And also now we both work remotely full-time, so it also serves as home office for 2 of us. The house is arranged in a way that it's a little cramped, it's a little tight, and while we still are very happy with the home, the neighborhood, the location, we are asking for these variances to accommodate a modest expansion and an additional access to natural light. The home also has a little less natural light just due to its orientation and where the facing and where the windows happen to be. So now that it's our full-time home, we would just like to make a few improvements to so that it'll be a better long-term home for us. We also made every effort to work within the confines, but just because, and our architect will get into the technicalities there, but we are trying to expand in a way that's fitting to the home, that's in the spirit of the home, keep it in the neighborhood, and also make as little impact on our neighbors as possible. We spoke to all our neighbors, and nobody raised any objections. We have two of them were willing to sign statements to that effect, which you can see there. So with that little statement, I'll turn it over to our architect, Bill Finicum, to talk about the technical details.
Before you go, sir,
Sure.
just since you're up here, do any members of the board have any questions for this gentleman? No? Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sir, please to step forward, identify yourself and your relationship to the property.
My name is William Finicum. I'm with Finicum Brownlee Architects. I'm the project architect for this project. I think Mr. Evans described our needs pretty well. I'll just basically say that there are two additions being made. One is a very small addition of 96 feet or square feet in the front. That's it for the little sunroom. And then there's also 215 feet being added directly off the master bedroom in the back. We feel that this appeal meets all 5 standards for measuring practical difficulty. Number one, the exceptional characteristics of the property are the property is actually slightly splayed towards the east from front to back, and it's also tapers from front to back. It's 18 feet wider in the front than it is in the back. Now, when the house was built, there was a variance granted to allow it to be a little closer to the west property line than allowed by the ordinance. And that's because the Homeowners Association demands that, or prohibits, the garages from facing the street. So to have a side entry garage, it means you have to have at least 20 feet, and they have 21 point something feet to allow the cars to turn and get into the garage. That pushed the house that they wanted to build a little bit too close to the property line. So it was a variance of 4 feet was granted. The variance that we're asking for is just is less than 4 feet beyond that. The reason that the lot tapering affects us is because we're adding directly to the back of the house, and as already the back corner of the house is encroaching the amount of that first variance. So as we go back another 8 feet, we're encroaching a little bit farther. The second of the, another exceptional characteristic of the property is that the house is situated, in order for the house to fit as tightly as they could get it, they put it right on the front property line, and they have it as close to the west as they possibly can. So there's no opportunity for growth except straight out the back. The second characteristic, or second of the 5 standards, is what characteristics make compliance with the dimensional requirements difficult? Number one is the organization of the house is such that it mandates that the master bedroom be, if it's to expand, has to expand in the northwest corner. That's where it happens to be. We can't have it expand directly off behind the living room or directly behind the kitchen or behind the garage. It has to be where the bedrooms are. The second thing is the orientation of the house is such that it faces, the front faces south. There are two small porches on each side of the front door. They're only about 4 feet 10 deep. We want to enclose one of those as a sunroom to capture south sun. Right now, the house is rather dark because there's only a small den which is enclosed, and then the dining room windows. So we're trying to capture light and make an enjoyable indoor lighted area for them to use for just sitting and conversation. There is no other place to orient or to capture south light. There's no other place to capture light, period, in the public area of the house, because the public areas are the living room and the kitchen, and they go towards the north. There's a small den that goes to the south and also the dining room. So we had a choice to put it on one side or the other, and we chose the dining room side. The third standard is the characteristics that make compliance with the dimensional requirements are not of a personal nature. Well, that's what that goes into what I was just explaining. The sunroom has to be on the front because it is must face south, and the bedroom must be in the back northwest corner because that's where the bedrooms are. This isn't a personal choice. This is what the house is demanding is done if we're to have these additions. The fourth is what characteristics make compliance with the dimensional requirements difficult were they not created by the current owner. Is it a self-created hardship? No. The house was built by the previous and only other owner. They situated the house on the property, but neither owner had anything to do with the shape of the lot or how the lot was formed. In other words, the northwest corner, that sliver, was not broken off from the property and sold to a neighbor so that they could have more room. The lot was platted this way, the house is built this way, and there have been no other additions to the house. Now, the last criteria is, if granted, the proposed variance would not be harmful to or alter the essential character of the area. This property is on a dead-end street. The sunroom is 58 feet from the street and 178 feet from the across the street neighbor, the only ones who can actually see this. It is designed to blend with the lines of the house. Toward the west, the master bedroom addition is bordered by a wetland on 17.5 acres of property where the temple is located. The grade rolls down away from the wetland and then climbs high up to the site where the temple was built, 350 feet away. So there's no impact whatsoever that this will have. Second, the proposed variance will not impair the supply of light and air to the adjacent properties. Just mention how far away all of these additions are from any other houses or properties. The proposed variance will not increase the congestion of public streets or increase the danger of fire or public safety. Well, there's no additional traffic being generated by these small additions. It's still the same people living in the house. Number 4, the proposed variance will not diminish or impair the established property values. We feel that improving any property is going to improve the property values of the surrounding properties. And in this case, it will be true. Number 5, the proposed variance will in no way impair the public health, safety, comfort, morals, or welfare of the inhabitants of the city. We feel this addition will have a very positive impact on the neighborhood, and we ask respectfully that you grant the variances so that the O'Briens can use the house to their best advantage. Thank you.
Thank you,
If you
sir.
have questions, I'll be happy to answer.
We appreciate the, yes, Mr. Green.
Sorry, Ann, I'm jumping. I see a couple things. Specifically, I'm talking about the rear addition that you're looking at. Pardon. The one that is looking for another 3.6 odd feet. I see it going closer towards that little drainage waterway there towards the wetland. And looking at that property, it looks like the ground does in fact start to slope right about there. Is there any concern about structural integrity of either the bank or adding something at that place as it gets closer to the water's edge?
No, because as the grade rolls off, we'll have to step the footings down. And we're going to have a choice that we may bid an alternate to have it either be a basement under that area, because if the foundations, instead of being 3.5 feet deep, if they're already, say, 6 or 7 feet deep, then maybe you just take it down the rest of the way and make a basement instead of a crawl space. But there's no structural difficulty in doing that. It's just a matter of working with the grades or respecting the grade there.
Waterproof the jeebers out of it. Is there any particular reason, obviously you can't, per the local guidelines, you can't move things because you got the garage where it is. You're limited at the front, and you don't want to build it in front of your other light source. But is there any particular reason that you can't go up? I see that some of the properties in the area have second stories, so that's not.
Well, at the very beginning of the project, we did a study for a second-story addition. And there are two things with when you add a second floor to a one-story house. This is my elevator speech to my clients in the first meeting. First thing is you need to know that you have to sacrifice something downstairs to put a stair in to be able to get up. The second thing is you need to build enough on the second floor to make it look right. You don't want this tiny little thing popping up on top of your nice long low house and look odd, like Mr. or Mrs. Potato Head's nose if she's looking up. It's a matter of scale and proportion and harmony and that sort of thing. And we found that their needs were not such that they needed an extra 2 bedrooms and a bath upstairs, in addition to 3 bedrooms and 2 baths that are already downstairs. What they need is the extra 200 square feet, and they need the extra 100 square feet. So we're trying to be conservative and not have great impact on the house. And this is where we are. That's why we're going out instead of up. Now, just in case your next question is why not just move the thing over? It's because it would go behind the living room and block the living room. So to avoid that, if you then change the proportion and made it skinnier and longer this way, the longer it goes this way, the more it encroaches and the further you have to move it over. So it doesn't matter how long and skinny you make it, you end up encroaching either farther into the setback or farther into the living room. So we've kind of honed it to a point where we really think this is optimal, and we feel it has very little impact. So we're hopeful you'll agree.
Understood. Thank you.
Mr. Forster and then Mr. Kingery.
Just a couple of quick questions. Then there's no way that you can move this to the northeast corner of the house because there's a bedroom there. Is that?
Well, the northeast corner is the laundry and the mudroom. And if we were to put a master bedroom suite on that side, we'd have to build an entire bedroom, dressing area, sitting area, and bathroom over there. We'd be building a huge complex. And it's not unusual to have a master bedroom on one wing and other bedrooms on another wing. But it's just not in the program to have to build all of that space. That might end up being 800 or 900 square feet. I mean, many master suites are 1,000 square feet or more. So again, we're trying to just do this with the least impact that we can.
And to address the concern Mr. Brossenbeck brought up originally, what about that easement that's labeled there?
That is something we have not answered yet, and we thought that we don't have to answer it. And if we don't get past you, it's moot. So if we do get past you, then we have to deal with them. And I'm optimistic that I don't know what's going through there. I don't know where whatever it is placed, but wherever it is, I'm optimistic that either in that 10 feet, it can be relocated if necessary, or an easement might be secured from the temple to allow a small encroachment into their property to get around that corner. But that's something I didn't want to broach until the need came. It seems funny that they took 10 feet off of the houses when there's 17 and a half acres that they could put one wire going through, or what, one pipe, whatever happens to be doing there.
Thank you, sir.
So,
Mr. Kingery.
Yeah, this is covered in your package, but I just want to draw attention to it. The subdivision deed requires a side entrance garage,
yes.
right? So that requires a 22 feet driveway. That's what I see in your drawing. So instead of a normal 15 feet setback, you essentially lost 7 feet there because of necessitating a 22 feet driveway,
Yes,
right?
that's correct.
And without that deed requirement, that 7 feet would have been available on the other side, and the home could have been centered on
Right.
the.
They had been able to move the house over originally. Right, correct.
So that, and then the slant on the lot kind of compounded that problem further.
Right, not only would their corner have been within the setback then, but I believe, I haven't done it graphically, but I believe ours would be within the setback also,
Okay.
if it was able to have been moved over 7 feet. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Malalali.
Thank you, Chairman. Two questions. One, normally sunrooms are usually placed at the back of the house, which is in this case, going to be the other way around because of the fact that the sun comes through. They get the most sun in the south area, which means it is going to be right next to the front door. Am I correct?
Yes.
Is that how it's, okay. And the front door on one of the images that I'm seeing in front of me on page 28 in the packet, the sunroom is going to sit right next to the front door. Is there going to be enough space? I mean, how will the entryway look for, in terms of the steps that we have there, access to the front door? Will there be any limitations there?
I'll look at the plan so I can give you a precise. Mr. Evans, do you happen to have our perspective
Yeah.
up there? There's room for a side light next to the door.
Oh, okay.
So, and it shows on the perspective, the site plan drawing, this drawing here. There you go. Now, if you blow it up on the bottom there you go. See that? That's what it will look like.
Got it, okay.
So I think there's adequate space there.
Okay, so there won't be any restricted front door access, okay. So you have a homeowners association, I take it?
Yes, we do.
And there are no restrictions in terms of having something like a sunroom on the front?
We don't have the formal written approval yet, but we have a verbal approval from the gentleman who's on the review committee. I don't know, is he the chairman? Oh, there's only two people. One of them lives in the house behind, and he has looked at it and approves of the design and has indicated there won't be any problem getting it approved. So we're taking that as a yes.
So at this
But
point...
we still have to get it formalized.
Correct, okay. So it's a verbal agreement at this time, and he's okay with the proposed idea?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Mr.
Or if you,
Well, I have a few questions. Just to follow up, first of all, on the easement, can you give a more description of what type of easement it is, who owns it? Is it for a public utility? Is it owned by consumers or DTE, or what type of easement is it?
It says 10-foot private easement for public utilities. That's all we know about it.
Okay. So
That's from our survey, and I'd have to ask the surveyors to dig into it farther.
Okay. My second question is, and I appreciate how you went through all the elements of the statement of practical difficulty, the different things that we have to consider. I think you said there's 3 different variances that you're asking for to do this project. The request, as it relates to the sunroom in the front, when we're talking about the first requirement, which is identifying an exceptional characteristic of the property, and I think you said it's basically the fact that it's an irregularly shaped parcel that is the exceptional characteristic. What is it about that front variance request that has to do with the exception, the irregularity of the shape? Because as I'm looking at the picture, the front of the house is essentially parallel to the front boundary, or at least the boundary facing Donegal. So in that respect, how does the irregular shaped parcel have to do with that first variance request?
The sunroom addition relates more to the other characteristic, which is the orientation. It's really not affected by the irregular shape. It's affected, except to the degree that the house has been pushed forward as far as it can possibly go, because the further forward it goes, the less it encroaches on the west side. So the house is now pushed right up against the setback line. But it's the orientation where it's facing south, and And to be effective, it can only face south. We can't capture light over our shoulder, so to speak, by putting an addition on the north side and then making it real tall and catching light with a clear story way up in the air, because it's still not going to be direct sunlight down in the room. It's just going to be light, up there. So it's the orientation that is the of the site, and the site, that's a characteristic of the site, is which way it's facing.
And so I guess to follow up on that question then, so does the orientation of the sunroom, how is that not more of a personal nature? Like ideally, you'd want to have a sunroom here as opposed to here because you want to capture as much sun as you can, but how does that square with the requirement that a request not be of a personal nature, something you'd rather want as opposed to you need?
Well, if you are going to build a sunroom and you want it to be a sunroom and capture sun and function properly, then it needs to be on the south side. That's not a personal thing. That's a fact. The sun travels to the south. It does not travel past the north. That's not a personal thing. The fact that people are affected by lack of sunlight in the wintertime is a personal problem, but that's not a personal thing that they brought on themselves that they wished they had. And so I don't consider this a personal choice to put it there. I believe if, as an architect, I look at we're trained problem solvers. We look at all the criteria, and we weigh the pluses and minuses, and we put them together in the best possible way. And having a sunroom function properly, it belongs on the south side. You just put it on the south side. So it's not a personal thing.
My other question, I guess, relates to the other two variance requests that have to do more with the side-to-side setbacks. And then I guess this goes to the element of letter D, which is it hasn't been created by the current or the previous owner or a previous owner. And I guess my question is, I think you said that was the previous owner the original owners of the home from 1977 or so, whenever this.
Yes.
So I guess the question is, obviously the previous or original owners decided where to put the house, and they went through the the time and expense and to get a variance from this body 40 some years ago. So if that was their determination, this is where we're going to place the house, I guess how are we addressing D? I understand that obviously we like to have an adjustment here or have an adjustment there, but that was a determination made by a previous owner. This is where the house is going to sit.
Well, first of all, I'm not clear on why it has anything to do with the other people. It's my clients who did not create this condition. The other people, if it had been two owners ago who did it and the previous owner didn't do it, I don't see a difference. However, to answer your question directly, they did not create the shape of the lot. And what they did to site the house was respond to the shape of the house. And they pushed it, and the association, they pushed it to the west as far as they could, and they stopped. Now, you'll say, why did they put that house there? Why didn't they put an L-shaped house that would fit on there? Why didn't they put a square house that would fit there? I have no idea, but they chose this house, and they're allowed to put this house there, and that was 40 years ago, and it's not as though the two owners conspired to do this so that we could come in and ask for a variance.
Sure. I mean, we're just, we're called to look at the zoning ordinances and the requirements. We need to follow what the different criteria are, so that's how we're trying to apply it. So I appreciate your answers. Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes, just first off, I appreciate the effort you put in with creating these drawings and all the information and the pictures. It's a very complete information packet for us. We often don't receive this quality of information from the applicants. I also appreciate in going through this and getting an understanding of your presentation and the criteria. I always find it interesting what the zoning ordinance allows and what the zoning ordinance doesn't allow. Like in the front of the house, you have a new egress that appears to be being added for safety. That doesn't violate the ordinance for setbacks because those egresses are allowed in the setback, but it's actually more forward than the sunroom will be on the site. And then in the back of the house, like you said, if you had done it a different shape, because of that lot size with the angle on the side of the property, as you get narrower, it still encroaches to get that livable space onto the back of the bedroom area. And then you have the deed restriction with the driveway. Looking at the pictures, I was unable to visit the site specifically before the meeting to have a look, but I traveled through this neighborhood many Tuesday evenings with a group of cyclists. Missing it this evening because of this meeting. But it looks like there's a gas meter on the side of the house. Do you know what other utilities, if the water meter is on that side of the house? Okay. Do you know if your electrical meter's on that side of the house? Because that's what you're going to encounter, obviously, in the ground when you get it surveyed and they do the little flagging. But again, like the architect pointed out, I believe that it doesn't affect us on the board because obviously you can't dig a hole for the foundation or basement. If there's utilities there, you have to move them. One of our other criteria that we deal with on this board is limiting impact on greenery and natural features. And it looks like the design that you've proposed has basically no impact on any of the natural features or the greenery in the area. There's no existing trees where you've proposed it. Even though there's many trees, it also appears, let me look at the page again.
29.
This view from the
29?
north has it, the red outline is kind of where the corner of the
Yep.
house will come. No landscaping is impacted.
Yeah, you had some of the landscaping drawn in on page 22, where you have the row of arborvitaes that shows up in the pictures. So do those arborvitaes, they also provide a year-round screening of your property, of the property from all the neighbors, correct? So the rear is invisible to the adjacent neighbors. Is that true?
right.
Okay. There was one more thing, and I think you covered it, Mr. Bostonbrook, when you... Oh, the planters. The planters in the front of the house also looks like it lines up exactly with the front of the sunroom. In the picture on page 27.
Is that the photograph?
Yep, that one.
Yes.
That is the architectural intent, is you'd keep that aligned. So basically that existing sidewalk footing would continue with the addition as without.
Yes. The planter actually, I believe, comes out between 2 and 3 feet, and we're coming out 2 feet with the corner of the sunroom.
So you'd line up exactly with that existing feature that's already on the house. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Green?
We've discussed how this will be in line with other features of the house, but what, other than obviously space, what does that 2 feet out front, 2 point whatever, net you as opposed to not having the 2 feet? You're getting the south light anyhow.
Well, we want it to be a usable space. If we don't, if we just build it flush with the garage wall, in my packet, I think I said it was 4 feet 10. Yeah, I think it's 4 feet 10. And by expanding it, the extra 2 feet and having a little thinner wall, we end up with 7 feet usable space inside, which is enough for some plants and a couple of chairs and just a nice kind of quiet place to sit and enjoy. It's not a large space, but it will be usable as opposed to not usable. So.
Are there any further questions for members of the board? I don't see any. Thank you, sir, for your presentation and answering all of our questions.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. At this point, we will open public hearing on this matter. I'll first ask if there's anyone who would wish to speak from the public. Seeing no one rushing to the podium. I know we have a couple correspondence that was passed out before the hearing. I think Mr. Eisenbacher will do the honors of reading them for us or giving us a summary.
Yes, it's short, so I'll just go ahead and read it. It says, Dear Mr. Evans, and I assume Zoning Board of Appeals, our backyard abuts the backyard of Jake and Amanda Pfeiffer O'Brien of 2840 Donegal Drive. We have seen the plans for the proposed changes to their home, and we have absolutely no objection to a variance for the plans as shown. Sincerely, Don and Jill Hemmon, which is at 6857 Galloway Bay, which, looking at the map that the city administration had provided, is directly behind the residence, if I'm not mistaken. And then the second one is, Dear Mr. Evans, we live next door to Jake and Amanda Pfeiffer O'Brien of 2840 Donegal Drive. We have seen the plans for the proposed changes to their home, and we have absolutely no objections. And that's Jim and Lisa Bosky, 2824 Donegal Drive, which is the only adjacent neighbor.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Eisenbacher. And I think that will conclude all our public comments. So we'll close the public hearing. And at this point, bring it back to the board. Board members, if anyone wishes to be recognized to discuss, offer any motions. Mr. Eisenbacher?
Going up to our prepared resolutions. At this time, I would like to make that the variance request for 2840 Donegal Drive for the specified setbacks be granted for the following reasons. The applicant has demonstrated that A, the exceptional characteristics on the property for which the variance is sought makes compliance with the dimensional requirements substantially more difficult than would be the case for the great majority of properties in the same zoning district because of the angled shape of the home, and also respecting the neighborhood's aesthetic feature of not having the garages facing towards the street, which is, although not listed in our zoning ordinance, it is a characteristic which affects the property specifically in item E, which I will get to. B, the characteristics which make compliance with the dimensional requirements difficult are related to this premises and not some other location. C, the characteristic which makes compliance with the dimensional requirements is not of a personal nature, is associated with the shape of the house and the situation of the house on the property, and the shape of the property, obviously. D, the characteristic which makes compliance with the dimensional requirements difficult was not created by the current owner or the previous owner. E, the proposed variance will not be harmful or alter the essential character of the area in which the property is located, does not impair the adequate supply of light and air to the adjacent properties, does not unreasonably increase the congestion in public streets or increase the danger of fire or endanger public safety, or unreasonably diminish or impair established property value within the surrounding area, or in other respect impair the public health, safety, comfort, morals, or welfare of the inhabitants of the city. And I would also add that it does not affect any of the natural vegetation or the slopes on the property which are currently existing. So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second on the motion? All right, Mr. Forster seconds Mr. Eisenbacher's motion. At this point, any further discussion, comments from members of the board?
May I ask a question?
Yes.
So what happens when they go seek permission? What happens to the easement area and the utility line that goes through it? What if they're not successful in getting the permission to go ahead and put up this addition? What happens next?
They can't build.
They won't be able to.
That would be my understanding.
So no more variances then will be granted, or can they come back with any other kind of variances in order to?
I don't know, Mr. Evans, is there any?
Well, they could come back for a different type of variance.
They could come back. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Redo.
And the variance wouldn't go away if they couldn't get permission. If they eventually could find a way to solve that problem, the variance is good for a year.
Yeah, having that part of the puzzle not very clear for them to go ahead, I was kind of curious, how will they be able to approach this particular project? Probably seek a different kind of variance at that stage, or tweak the project goals so that they can do something in that area or build something still, correct?
Presumably. I mean,
Okay.
ultimately, it's their decision how they want to proceed if they can't get any further with the easement.
Right, okay, thank you.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
And just historically, if a person hasn't been able to get a variance, they've also done something where they angled it. So it would not be a big chunk to have it would look funny not being square, but
They
you could angle it and avoid, it doesn't affect the big picture just makes it a lot more difficult to build because you have everything crooked.
Yeah, yes, understandable. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarifications.
So I guess I'll add my comment with the motion on the table. Like Mr. Eisenbacher said, I appreciate the thorough, thought-out, detailed, packet that was presented, the presentation, the questions. For my part, again, I'm looking at our characteristics that we have to see and be convinced that every petitioner has satisfied. And I guess, as I kind of alluded to in my questions, I'm not satisfied that all of these elements have been met. Certainly from a practical perspective, I understand, what's being asked for and why you would ask for it. Unfortunately, as I look at the requirements for a variance, like I said, as it relates to the front request, as I'm thinking of the sunroom, I don't believe that an exceptional characteristic of the property for that variance request has been identified. I think that the exceptional narrowness or the irregularity of the property is relevant to that specific variance request. I think as to the other two variance requests, I'm I'm stuck, and I don't think I can get past the fourth requirement that this dimensional problem wasn't created by a previous owner. I recognize in some way why that may not sound fair, but I think that the way the variance, the standards are written, a previous owner, not the immediate previous owner, although here it was the immediate previous owner, could not have been the reason. And I understand that, way back in the 70s, before I was even born, someone, they determined this is where we want the house to be. This is the shape we want it to be. They went to the ZBA and obtained that variance request. So I think that is not an element that's met here. And I do think that to some extent, some of these, and we see this in other appeals as well, I think some of these requests are of a personal nature. I think that, in kind of the dialogue we've had, there may have been alternatives that were determined not to be what you wanted to pursue, and that's fine. But there were other alternatives. Maybe they were more expensive, maybe they were more inconvenient. Those are not really things that we consider in determining whether to grant a variance. But I'm not necessarily convinced that some of these aren't of a personal nature. So for myself, unfortunately, I won't be voting in favor of the motion. Mr. Forster.
I just, when you talk about pre-existing conditions, and I think Mr. Evans has got the correct slide up. I think the issue here came more with the developer and the housing association than anyone else. It looks to me like they wedged another property in there when every other block north of it has 4 lots, and they've got 5 there. And the homeowners association forced the issue with the garage door on the side, which then shoved the house over even more and created these things. I really think that when you look at what is practical in living in a space and improving the space commensurate with the neighborhood, I don't think these are unfair requests. I understand what you're saying about the sunroom, but I think the sunroom can be argued in 2 ways. I think that if you look at the other houses, some of them have much more window frontage on the south of the neighborhood, and to get that equal frontage, you need some of this. So I guess I could argue that because this is the way it is in terms of the lot, it's prevented them from doing that. So my point of view is just a little bit different, and I respect yours, but I think I'll be voting for it because of that.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kenkre?
Right. I think the house ended up where it is because of the shape of the lot. If they had pushed the house further back, it would have cut into the setback even more. And in 77, when they built the house, they had to get like 4 feet of setback just to put it where it is. If they had pushed it back, they would have needed more than 4 feet to do that. Or they would have had to create some kind of an oddball shape, which is not normal. So I think just for a normal looking house and to be able to do with the way the shape was, I think they just had to put it where it is, which is right up to the 40 feet setback in front.
Okay. Mr. Green?
Thank you. I share some of your concerns, Mr. Chair. My biggest one is actually about the placement closer to the water, despite being able to go deeper in the footing. It's certainly not the Mississippi, but it is pushing it that much closer to water, to a floodplain, and pushing it deeper. So whether that's a basement or just footing, that's increasing that risk. And also, while it's not in our purview, that's also looking at pushing the utilities further into the wetland, if that's even possible for them, or rerouting in some other way. Taking that out of consideration, speaking more to the potential for issues later on, that's one of my bigger concerns there. As much as I totally understand, I've been fortunate enough as well to be able to work from home and had to reconfigure a lot of how we did things and changed rooms, what they were doing entirely in order to make that functional. So I sympathize very much with that, but I struggle with pushing it in that direction as much as I have no idea the cost, but as much as that might take it from 50 to 100,000 to stack it instead of just going slightly off to the side. I struggle there. I am more inclined, despite similar concerns to Mr. Bossenbrook, to grant the front variance were that to be broken out. The 2 feet, while it is certainly a request of an easement because it goes against the current zoning requirements, that addition of sun, the restrictions on the garage making that very difficult, that is, as you say, south is south. That's where you put a sunroom. And so to me, that's not of a personal nature. I'd be more willing to accept a single item and approve that. But as a whole, I can't, I don't think.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I think we are prepared for a vote. Mr. Evans, with the motion on the table, I'm sorry, Ms., did you have a?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. The motion on the table was presented by Mr. Eisenbacher to grant the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Forster, and that's what is before us now.
Mr. Forster,
Yes.
Mr. Bossenbrook,
No.
Mr. Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Ms. Mahalahali,
Yes.
Mr. Kenkre,
Yes.
Mr. Green.
No.
4 yeses, 2 nos. The motion passes.
Motion passes. Thank you for coming out tonight. We appreciate your presentation again and your time with us. Moving on to item number 6. Any communications?
None.
And number 7, any miscellaneous business, Mr. Evans, or anyone from the board? No? We will open it now to any public comment. Item 8, if anyone from the public wishes to speak? No? All right. I think we are concluded our business for this evening. Hope everyone has a great rest of the month and perhaps see you in May.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.